We've had a couple of interesting conversations already. John Rentoul from The Independent, Christine Jardine for the Liberal Democrats. In your view, parties, policies or the press, which is doing the Prime Minister most harm?
Parties. The public are very concerned if they think that the Prime Minister and the people around the Prime Minister didn't comply with the rules in the way that the vast majority of the British public did. The people making the rules should be expected to follow those rules as well. And that's the real issue here for the Prime Minister, and a concern that he was either negligent or willfully broke the rules, and that he was responsible for a culture in Downing Street for the officials and special advisors who were working for him that meant that they felt they didn't need to stick to the letter and spirit of the rules as well. And that's a real problem for him, because the public do care about it, because this was directly relevant to them. The rules that were in place impinged on all of us. And it was an extraordinary time. It still is an extraordinary time in many respects in terms of what we can and cannot do. And the issue isn't whether the rules were right or not. The issue is whether the people making the rules should stick to them. And that information is coming out now, which strongly suggests that the Prime Minister probably, and certainly the people around him, weren't sticking to those rules.
Sure. To what extent is there a get-out clause? It's a genuine question, and most of the people on my Twitter feed don't agree with it, but I'm going to put it to you anyway, that it was more to do with the bright young things, the masters and mistresses of the universe, SPADs, top advisors, Cummingses, Allegra Strattons and what have you. It was down to them, and you can't simply say a busy Prime Minister in the middle of a coronavirus has got time to keep an eye on what each and every one of them is doing. But they should jolly well have known what they were doing was wrong.
I think in many cases that is right. They should have known, and there is personal responsibility there. But where the public interest is, in both senses of that phrase, I think it does come back to the Prime Minister. Because if you set a certain standard, if you like, if there is a certain culture that is set at the top, then others will follow. And speaking as someone who was a minister who served under both David Cameron and Theresa May, I find it inconceivable that the culture that we are learning about would have been in place under either of those prime ministers, or, to be fair, Gordon Brown or Tony Blair or John Major or Margaret Thatcher. It is hard to imagine that there would have been a sort of sense of, hold on, let's push at the limits of the law, of the rules, of the guidance. That simply would not have happened. And I think that's why this is proving to be damaging for the Prime Minister, because what we're hearing is not completely out of character. It's not, it's hard to believe that Boris Johnson would allow a sort of a lax view to the rules and regulations. That is consistent with his record and his personality and temperament.
OK. Does the Telegraph, David, offer him a way out? Time for the Tories to... there we are, I can't see it if I allow it to flop over. Time for the Tories to rediscover their values, and then the big interview with David Frost in there by Liam Halligan as well. Basically, if he gets back to what they want him to do, get Brexit done, cut taxes, reduce spending and the rest of it, he's back in with a chance? Or is this the Telegraph talking directly to the man or the woman who might replace him if it comes to that?
I think that's a good point. I think it's more the latter. I don't think the problem that Boris Johnson has with the public is that he is not sufficiently sort of Telegraph friendly. I don't think that is essentially his problem. Yes, it is the case that he is running into some difficulties internally within the Conservative Party and from some of the Conservatives' natural supporters, like the Daily Telegraph, because of his policies in some areas. But that is not the source of his current difficulties. It is not a revolt over the increase in national insurance contributions. It is a revolt over how the Prime Minister has behaved, and the public feeling as if they've been taken for fools to some extent, that the person imposing the rules on the nation as a whole wasn't imposing those rules on his own office. That's the difficulty there. And of course, the Telegraph has a particular agenda, and it wants to pursue that. It's perfectly entitled to do it. But to think that that is the main problem that Boris Johnson faces at the moment, or the slump in the Conservatives' popularity is to do with policy on tax or COVID restrictions or whatever, that isn't the case. The problem is the parties. The problem is the sense that the culture inside Boris Johnson's number 10 during those lockdown periods was simply unacceptable.